Welcome to Movies in the Making. In today's episode, we are going to be looking at the 2014 epic fantasy film The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies, originally released by Warner Bros. And directed by Peter Jackson. Here, we will dive deep into the story of the production of this film. The book might be small compared to The Lord of the Rings, but with a trilogy made based on it, so much had to happen during production. So sit back and enjoy the show. You are all in for an unexpected ride. The Battle of the Five Armies is the third and final installment of the Hobbit trilogy. Director Peter Jackson's decision to turn the 1937 book by J.R.R. Tolkien into a trilogy was controversial, as it was originally intended to be a single film. Jackson, already successful with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, had hoped to start with The Hobbit, using it as a way to test the waters for his adaptation of Tolkien's other works. However, his initial pitch for The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings to Miramax was rejected, and the studio only wanted a single movie for The Lord of the Rings. Jackson's frustration led him to take his idea to New Line Cinema, who were excited about making a trilogy based on The Lord of the Rings volumes. The rights to the Hobbit book were owned by United Artists, so Jackson could only legally adapt The Lord of the Rings at that point. Jackson's decision, combined with rights issues over The Hobbit, ultimately led to Jackson creating the Hobbit trilogy, despite the book being much shorter than the Lord of the Rings novels. While many fans felt that splitting The Hobbit into 3 films was unnecessary, the decision was likely influenced by Jackson's desire to replicate the success of his previous trilogy. The added content and new characters in the films were often criticized for straying too far from the original book. However, Jackson's vision for The Hobbit had its challenges, as the book's lighter tone and simpler story were a stark contrast to the darker themes of The Lord of the Rings. Despite the mixed reception of the Hobbit films, Jackson's ability to bring The Lord of the Rings to the screen remains a major achievement. Another plan Jackson had was to adapt the book into a mere duology. For example, this would mean that the barrels along the river scene present in the Desolation of Smaug would be the ending for the first film. However, Jackson and his team decided to restructure the films and the split was ultimately moved to a more satisfying point. He also clarified that the decision to make The Hobbit a trilogy was not pushed by the studio but a realization Jackson and his team had during production when they realized they had too much material to fit into just 2 films. The original title for The Battle of the Five Armies was There and Back Again. However, after seeing an early cut of the film, Jackson chose to change the title to The Battle of the Five Armies, as the original title would only work for a 2-part film. The title of the third film was obviously referring to the enormous climax of the trilogy, but also balanced out the different perspective out of all the sides involved in this titular battle. Content that was filmed for the Battles of the Five Armies that did not reach the final stage include there being a funeral in the film, a climactic chariot race, and Anthony Sher portraying Thorin Oakenshield's father, Brain. Although these scenes were not included in the original theatrical edition, they would later be included in the extended edition to the enthusiasm of actor Richard Armitage, the actor for the character Thorin Oakenshield. This particular film used the least need for shooting at locations than the previous 2 Hobbit films. This was because, as part of Jackson's initial plans to adapt The Hobbit into 2 films, most of the filming needed was already completed. However, when it was decided that a 3rd film should be made, there was some extra filming needed, albeit not as much as the first 2 Hobbit films. Even without the need for the Battle of the Five Armies, more studio footage was filmed for The Hobbit than what had been done for The Lord of the Rings. Shooting for principal photography took 266 days, the exact same time span used for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. One filming location for the Battle of the Five Armies was at Pinewood Studios in England. Part of this was a result of how old Christopher Lee, who portrayed Saruman in The Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit films, was. Lee did not want to travel all the way to New Zealand amid his health conditions. Jackson then decided to film parts of the film somewhere in Lee's native UK, and Pinewood turned out to be the convenient place to complete filming for the actor. Lee later sadly died on the 7th of June 2015. The Battle of the Five Armies was the final film to feature him and be released before his death. The visual effects were done by WetFX. Just like with the previous 2 films, the supervisors were Joe Lettery, Eric Sandin, Chris White, and Matt Aitken. However, unlike the previous two films, the animation supervisors were Mike Cozens and Aaron Gilman this time. This installment also included crowd simulations and multiple types of software. One notable example is where Smaug breathes fire at the village. The entire scene is digital and airflow simulated, then sparked fire simulations, which led to the buildings collapsing in a strongly detailed reaction. Simulations created would often interact with other simulations. In a case for this scene, the simulations of the buildings falling down would match with the simulations of the lake splashing. Whereas An Unexpected Journey and The Desolation of Smaug were both nominated by the Academy for Best Visual Effects, an award all three Lord of the Rings films won, The Battle of the Five Armies did not receive this nomination. The Battle of the Five Armies used advanced filming techniques, including higher frame rates, HFR, and 3D to enhance the visual experience. Higher frame rates, particularly 48 frames per second (FPS) instead of the standard 24 FPS, were intended to create a smoother and more detailed motion, especially in fast-moving scenes like the epic battle sequences. In theory, this should have made the action look more fluid and immersive, providing a more lifelike feel to the film. Additionally, the movie was shot in 3D to add depth and create a more immersive experience for the viewer. The sharpness of the image also made some CGI elements more noticeable, breaking the illusion of immersion in the fantastical world. In addition, the 3D was criticized by some as not adding as much depth as anticipated, sometimes making the film less engaging than a more traditional 2D presentation. Despite the added clarity and sense of realism, these technical choices left a divided response among critics and audiences. The score for The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies, by Howard Shore plays a crucial role in enhancing the emotional and epic scope of the film. Shore, who had previously composed the music for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, returned to provide soundtrack for the Hobbit trilogy, bringing continuity to the musical themes of Middle-earth while also introducing new motifs that reflect the different tone and story of The Hobbit. It ties the film back to the larger Lord of the Rings mythos while also giving it a distinct musical identity. The score's use of thematic continuity, emotional depth, and large-scale orchestral arrangements enhances the film's spectacle and emotional power, making it an integral part of the film's overall impact. As the credits roll, the song The Last Goodbye plays. It was written and performed by Billy Boyd, who had previously portrayed the Hobbit character Pippin in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Similar to what Ed Sheeran did with his song I See Fire, made for The Desolation of Smaug, Boyd watched the Battle of the Five Armies to brainstorm ideas for a fitting song at the end of the film. Because it was the song to signify the end of Peter Jackson adapting Tolkien's works, a concluding song needed to fit just right for the ending. Boyd, alongside screenwriters Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens, eventually wrote together what they felt would be a perfect song that would conclude a 6-part saga that itself was difficult in the making. The Hobbit book by J.R.R. Tolkien has a total of 19 chapters. The Battle of the Five Armies covers chapters 14 onwards. Because the book was originally made for children, hence part of the reason why Jackson decided to adapt The Lord of the Rings first, as the book felt more sophisticated to him, it is short compared to the Lord of the Rings book. Consequently, some scenes were elongated to justify the Hobbit adaptation as a trilogy, just like with the Lord of the Rings. With the Battle of the Five Armies, differences between the film and the final chapters of its source material include the battle scenes being much larger, with over 100,000 CGI creatures compared to the 6,000 in the book. The journey distances also shrink, with characters covering hundreds of miles in just hours. Major plot changes include the deaths of Thorin, Kili, and Fili, which differ from how it happens in the book. Some characters like Bard and Thranduil are given more depth, while the dwarves lose the unique personalities developed in the earlier films. Despite these changes, some fans find Jackson's adaptation both entertaining and controversial. As of the 11th of December 2024, The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies has a 59% critics rating on Rotten Tomatoes, a 59 out of 100 score on Metacritic, a 7.4 rating on IMDb, and a 3.2 rating on Letterboxd. Out of all the 6 Tolkien adaptations from Peter Jackson, this film is the lowest rated on all of the websites, save for Metacritic, where the lowest rated is An Unexpected Journey. Battle of the Five Armies is also the only one out of the 6 films to receive a Rotten rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The film's budget was about $209 to $300 million, and it grossed about $956 million during its theatrical release over the course between the 10th of December 2014 and the 23rd of January 2015. And that wraps up our deep dive into the making of The Hobbit, the Battle of the Five Armies. We have journeyed through how the trilogy was originally meant to be one film, then two, why this film had the least needed filming locations out of the trilogy, and how Billy Boyd made his song The Last Goodbye for this film. Battle of the Five Armies was the third and final installment of a trilogy that attempted to expand upon a highly acclaimed trilogy. This new adaptation expanded the world of Middle-earth and served as both a continuation of the beloved Lord of the Rings saga and a reimagining of the trilogy's prequel. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to stay updated on all things movies in the making. Let us know in the comments what you think of The Hobbit, the Battle of the Five Armies, if you have any favorite moments from that film not touched upon here, or which movie you would like to see covered by this channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next time on Movies in the Making, where we will be talking about Sonic the Hedgehog, Paramount Pictures 2020, and more films to follow along the way. Tune in for more Movies in the Making as we uncover the stories behind cinema's most unforgettable films. This has been Jason Scotchmer, film enthusiast and passionate about the arts.